Hi, my name's Phil Fearon, and this video is introducing the concept of virtual formatting in an XML editor. The editor being used is called Coherent Web. So what I'm going to do first of all to explain virtual formatting is first of all show some XML that is formatted using space characters. I've just brought up Notepad here, and as you can see, if I select, you can see the highlighted space characters there in the left margin, and it's all it's a bit of a mess. Things have got out of control, but there's one particular part of the text there where there is no indentation because the actual white space is critical within that element. So I'm going to show what happens when this gets copied across into Coherent Web. I'm going to paste it in, but equally you would get the same result if you were opening it up as a file. As you can see, what's actually happened is everything's been straightened up so far as the indentation is concerned, and the reason why that's possible is because the space characters that aren't actually significant to the XML have all been removed, and I can demonstrate that by, if I just use this tree control, we can actually see which parts are actually characters and which these areas here just indicate that there's a left margin being adjusted to simulate indentation, if you like, and this method for actually avoiding the use of padding characters makes things a lot easier both for the user but also for the developer of the XML editor to be able to keep everything under control. So you can see here that the padding characters from the original text file, where they're significant, they're still kept, but those areas where there is no requirement for them, they've been stripped, and instead the system itself is taking care of the indentation, so it's aligning element names and so on. What I'm actually going to do is remove that and start with a fresh file. Start by typing in some XML that I'm actually copying from a book, but this gives you an idea of the dynamic behavior of a system that is not using any padding characters. And just another namespace declaration. So as you can see, there's not a lot of adjustment while the XML is not well formed, but as soon as things are correct, the indentation comes into effect. So I'm going to now add a stack panel child element, and so we're getting the child elements with the indentation that we'd expect also. And let's have a solid color brush, and in fact that's an empty element, so I just need to do that, and I need to add some attributes here. Let's shorten that, and then another attribute. Okay, so that's what an empty element would look like. So hopefully you're getting the impression that there's actually nothing that unusual about editing without space characters or tab characters at the left hand side. It feels and behaves quite natural. The only thing that gives away what is actually happening is if there's actually a different view that gets rid of the indentation like that. So what this is actually doing is it's not removing any characters or anything, it's just collapsing the left margin to the left edge of the editing window, and so we can go back like that. And then just to confirm, if I select that, you can see there highlighted, the only things that are highlighted are characters. So you can see where the left margin is actually going in, simulating those extra padding characters. Okay, I'm going to add another a button element actually, because that horizontal. So as you type in new attributes, you don't vertical. Let's have a look. Concentrate on this. It's not aligned immediately because the element isn't well formed, but as soon as there's a sense of what is being attempted, then the editor will actually bring things into line. So just to demonstrate, if I close that off there, then everything lines up again. And I'm going to actually add in some more. Now what I'm going to do here is add an attribute which has got a number of values all on different lines, and here what should happen is alignment should happen with the value rather than with the actual attribute name, so we can get a nice aligned list without having to make any effort whatsoever. Now just to show that there's nothing untoward going on, let's collapse the left margin again, and you can see that we haven't actually got any padding characters in there at all, but it helps keep things readable by keeping the indentation. What I'm actually going to do as a kind of cheat is copy that stack panel and paste it below. And just to show, we haven't actually got any text nodes in here at the moment, so I'm going to put in text node here. Indented properly. So this text node is actually, its parent is not, it's this element here, hence it's aligned to be indented at the same level as the child elements. If we were to put in here, for example, let's show what happens. So that's what a text node looks like when it's actually within immediately within its parent element. So we can highlight that there. So all the indentation is just done automatically, and what we can do if we like, I'll just demonstrate here, is let's add a few lines. Now sometimes you want to actually format your text independently of the XML context. So what I'll do is just use the block indentation features to do the same thing, or I can use a tab character. So now if we go back and collapse left margin, you can see that these spaces are actual real space characters, and that's because they're inserted independently of the XML context, and therefore they must be preserved. Right, so let's go back to the indented view, and what I can show you now is with the help of a bit of copy and paste. And let's just make sure I've got space characters I'm pasting in. So this is just to show what happens with word wrap. Note that the indentation is kept in line even though we're wrapping. Normally with a normal XML editor, because there would be characters for the first line, you would end up losing the indentation for subsequent wraps. You don't get that with this editor. By the way, word wrap is on at the moment, but there is an option for turning word wrap off, and so that's word wrap off there. So then we have the, which isn't all that useful. So let's put word wrap back on again, and we'll get the text wrapped again. Another aspect of XML editing, especially with XSLT, is that XML is often commented out, and when it's commented out, you still want to keep the indentation. So if I select this element here and select this on the toolbar to comment it out, you will see that the indentation is actually maintained, and yet it's within a comment. And the reason that that happens is that comments are actually parsed and tested to see if they contain text that appears to be XML. So we will continue to get XML formatting within a comment, even though I wouldn't advise actually editing comments as if they're XML and relying on the formatting. You could do this if you wanted to. So the comment is being formatted in exactly the same way as if it were XML. But there are checks in place to make sure that a text that just happens to have angle brackets in, for example JavaScript, isn't interpreted as XML, and so you don't want, if it's JavaScript in here, you want your own indentation rules to be applied and not those for XML. So let's uncomment that just by pressing that, and you can see that everything remains intact once we've uncommented text. Another benefit of virtual formatting, and the fact that these there are no padding characters to get in the way, is it allows drag and drop to be much more effective, because when you drag text there is no indentation to worry about. So I can drag an element within another element and it will assume the indentation for that element without any correction by me. So if I want to move the whole of that into a stack panel, I can do that quite easily. So the other things that you can consider doing is, if we want to move some attributes into another element, we can easily do that without having to do any corrections to the indentation at all. One thing to be aware of is the fact that these indents for each line are being calculated all the time in the background. So if for any reason the structure changes, you will get an immediate response in the structure and the indentation of the XML text. So what I'm going to do here is convert what is an element tag into something that starts looking like a processing instruction. And so you can see the immediate effect is that it's no processing instructions. The content of that can be any text, and therefore it's not indented in any way. The indentation rules aren't used. But if I remove that question mark character, we go back to having an element again, and everything's formatted properly. So hopefully that's a good demonstration of what's actually going on behind the scenes with virtual formatting. Okay, I'm just going to show you another benefit of using virtual formatting and avoiding the use of padding characters, and that's when you come to hard copy printing. So if I go to use our print preview, you can see the XML all correctly indented, and even the word wrap is properly indented. And the reason that can be done is because of the way that the padding characters are not getting in the way of the left margin. What I can do is, here we've actually got line numbering on, and line numbering is configured so that it actually follows the indentation, and this lets you get line numbers much more accurately, and it's also a helpful way of seeing where wrapping is happening. So on line 28 we can clearly see that there's some wrapping going on here. We can take line numbers off just by doing that. Right, let's go back to the editor. So this is the editor view, and what I'm going to do now, just to show what would happen if this was saved, the easiest way to show this visually actually is just to paste this into Notepad, because that is the same effect as saving. So let's delete what we have in Notepad already, and so that shows, because WordPad has got, oh, Notepad has got word wrap on at the moment. Let's take word wrap off. So this is actually, if you save this file, then that is actually what is saved as text, and then the next time it's opened it will be indented properly again. Now the benefit of actually not inserting padding characters when the file is saved is that when it's opened in another XML editor, it will actually be indented properly. In fact, let's just demonstrate that. Bring up one of my favorite editors, which comes up with an error message most of the time. Okay, so I'll create a new file here and paste in the XML, which is not yet recognized as XML, but if I remember how to do this. XML tools, check XML syntax. Pretty print, that will be it. So there we get the pretty print back again. And as you can see, there are a few problems that are encountered, and that's because the pretty print features within certainly the plugin that I'm using is not smart enough to indent attribute names and values. It will, however, indent the elements, okay, but not the attributes. But other plugins and other XML editors will cope much better, or should cope much better, with this, because all the context is there for them to be able to do pretty print properly. And the other benefit, of course, is that this uses the padding settings that are the user's preferences, so no indentation style is actually being imposed on users of other tools. So let's close Notepad. Don't want to. Right, well, just to conclude with what we've shown so far, as we're using virtual formatting, we find that the indentation is kept perfectly as the XML is being typed, so long as the XML is well formed. And when the XML is not well formed, measures are taken to ensure that the XML text does not leap about the screen, which would be the normal behavior if without some measures in place. We've also able to see that we've got two views possible. One is the view where indentation is kept, and the other is where the indentation is actually collapsed, but the text itself is just the same. Okay, that concludes this brief demonstration of virtual formatting using the Coherent Web XML editor.